There are $38 left in your account. 7 days remain until your next paycheck. Right now, you are standing in the discount aisle of a grocery store doing math on a loaf of bread that expires tomorrow. That $38 is everything left from a paycheck of $2,600. You earn that much and this is what remains. So, ask yourself something. If your salary doubled tomorrow, would your life actually change, or would you just spend more and still end up counting days until the next payday? This video is about exactly that question. It follows a warehouse worker living on a low wage and the single afternoon that completely rewired the way he thought about money. What he learned that day did not just change his life. It might change yours too. If you have ever felt like your paycheck disappears before you even understand where it went, stay until the end, because the real problem is almost never where you think it is. You wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You walk to the warehouse because even bus fare is a line item you have to think twice about. Boxes press into your shoulders all day. Forklifts hum around you, and you eat lunch alone because eating out is not something your budget allows. By the time you get home, your legs ache, your back is tight, your shirt is soaked through, and after all of it, your paycheck barely gets you to the next paycheck and nothing further. You joke about it with coworkers sometimes. You say, "We are not working for money anymore, we are just working for food." Everyone laughs, but nobody actually thinks it is funny because it is true. Your apartment sits on the edge of town. The ceiling leaks when it rains hard. The heater barely runs. Some nights you skip dinner entirely just to make sure you have enough for transportation the next morning. You notice something odd sometimes on your shift. There are a few older workers on the floor who have been there for over a decade, driving the same old cars, wearing the same worn work boots, never once complaining about money the way the younger crew does. You used to assume they simply never made much progress in life. It never once occurred to you that quiet and steady might actually be a different kind of success than the one you were chasing. But the thing that keeps pulling you backward is not really the size of your paycheck. It is what happens on the day your phone starts buzzing that evening. Friends are calling, telling you to come out, telling you life is short and you only live once, and you go without thinking twice. Bars, drinks you cannot really afford, food that costs more than it should, photos that make the night look perfect. Sometimes you buy new shoes or a jacket you do not need just so nobody assumes you're struggling. For a few hours you feel important, successful, like everyone around you. If you actually sat down and added up one of those nights, it would come up to almost $120. That is nearly 5% of your entire monthly paycheck gone in a single evening, and you never once looked at it that way while it was happening. You never looked at it that way because nobody ever taught you to look at money in terms of hours worked instead of dollars spent. A week later, reality shows back up. Your wallet is empty, your account is empty, your fridge is empty. You start quietly counting the days again until the next paycheck arrives, and then it happens all over again. A couple of your friends always seem to have it more figured out than you do. New phones every year, nice cars, closets full of things that make their lives look effortless online. You used to envy that, quietly wondering how they afford it all on wages that are not that different from your own. What you do not fully understand yet is that looking comfortable and actually being comfortable are two completely different things, and most people around you are working just as hard to hide their struggles as you are to hide yours. One afternoon, you are walking home from your shift and you pass a small restaurant. The smell of something roasting fills the street. Your stomach growls loudly. You check your pocket, and there is only enough for a loaf of bread. You stand there for a moment watching other people eat meals you cannot afford, and then you quietly walk away. That night, you lie awake staring at the ceiling, asking yourself why you work every single day, and your life never seems to move. The next month plays out exactly the same. Paycheck, going out, spending, an empty wallet, waiting again. Your life has turned into a loop that never breaks. You start to notice the pattern has a shape to it, almost like a chart you could draw on paper. A spike right after payday, then a steep and steady drop, then a flat, empty line for the last several days before it happens all over again. You just never had a name for it before? Some people call it living paycheck to paycheck, but hearing the phrase out loud never quite prepares you for what it actually feels like to live inside it month after month with no end in sight. One Saturday evening, walking home through your neighborhood, you hear shouting. A landlord is standing outside a gate, furious. A frightened tenant stands beside two bags that hold everything his family owns. The landlord is yelling that he has given enough time, that the man works every day, but never has the rent, that if he cannot pay, he needs to leave and go build his own house somewhere else. The tenant's wife starts crying. Their daughter grips her mother's dress. The man lowers his head and says he will pay next month. The landlord shakes his head and says he has heard that every month, that the man works, but he never plans. You stand frozen on the sidewalk. Those words were not meant for you. but somehow they land exactly like they were. You work, but you never plan. You look down at your own worn shoes, then toward the small room you rent a few streets away. What if that is you one day standing exactly where he is standing? The thought scares you more than you expect, and it stays with you the entire walk home, sitting in your chest like something heavy you cannot put down. For the first time, you realize something. It was never just your paycheck keeping you stuck, it was what you did with it after it landed. The next morning, instead of sleeping in, you walk to the public library. You have never actually been inside. Rows of shelves surround you, people reading quietly at long tables. You wander until one title catches your eye, something about building wealth on a small income. You borrow it and take it home. The first chapter surprises you because it does not promise overnight riches or secret tricks. It says a small paycheck is not your biggest problem. The absence of a plan is. You sit with that sentence for a long time because it describes your life exactly. Later in the book, there was a short passage that stops you completely. It says, if you save just $20 a week and let it grow slowly over 30 years, it can turn into tens of thousands of dollars without you doing anything heroic at all. Just $20 week after week left alone to build on itself. You read that paragraph 3 times because it feels almost too simple to be true, and yet nothing about it sounds like a trick. It is the first time anyone has explained money to you in a way that does not feel like a lecture or a sales pitch. When your next paycheck lands, you do not go out. Your friends call asking where you are. You tell them you are staying in tonight. They laugh and ask what happened, whether someone finally made you boring. You laugh too and tell them no, you just do not want your future disappearing in one weekend anymore. That night, for the first time in years, you cook your own dinner. Nothing fancy, but enough. You start writing every expense down in a small notebook: rent, food, transportation, savings. For the first time, your paycheck actually has a purpose attached to it. You divide it into 4 simple envelopes in your head: needs, savings, a small amount for fun, and an emergency fund you promise yourself you will not touch no matter what happens. You start looking at money differently in almost every part of your life. You stop thinking in terms of price tags and start thinking in terms of hours. A pair of shoes that cost $80 is not just $80 anymore, it is nearly a full shift on your feet lifting boxes, breathing in warehouse dust. Once you start measuring purchases in hours of your own labor instead of numbers on a receipt, spending suddenly feels a lot more real and a lot harder to do carelessly. Days turn into weeks. The changes are small. Some mornings you want to sleep in. Some evenings you want to go out with your friends again. You almost buy a pair of expensive shoes once just because everyone around you has them. Then you remember the family standing outside that rented house with nowhere to go, and you quietly put the shoes back on the shelf and walk away. There is a moment about 6 weeks in where you almost give up completely. A tire on your bike blows out, an unexpected bill shows up, and your small emergency fund gets wiped out in a single week. For a moment, you feel exactly like you did before, like none of it was ever going to work anyway. But instead of quitting, you open the notebook again and start over not from where you wish you were. That decision, more than any single dollar you save, is the one that actually changes your life. There is another detail worth mentioning here. Around this time, you start noticing how much energy you used to spend just maintaining the appearance of doing fine, curating photos, timing your spending around what your friends would see, choosing restaurants based on how they would look rather than how much they cost. All of that effort simply disappears once you stop performing for an audience that was never really paying that close attention to you in the first place. It turns out most people are far too busy worrying about their own image to spend much time studying yours. If you are still with me here, do not just feel sorry for him. Ask yourself, which one of these habits is actually keeping you from the life you want? And if this story is landing for you, go ahead and hit like and subscribe now, because sometimes one lesson is enough to change an entire decade. The next morning, you wake up before sunrise. Not because you have to, but because you want to become someone different. You make your bed, eat something simple, and read 10 pages before heading to work. You quietly repeat one phrase to yourself, one day at a time. At the warehouse, nothing on the outside has changed. You're still stacking boxes, still earning the same small paycheck, but something on the inside has shifted completely. While other workers complain during breaks, you open your notebook and write down ideas, business ideas, savings target, plans for the future. A coworker laughs and asks if writing in that notebook is going to make you rich. You smile and say no, but it might stop you from staying poor. You start paying more attention to your own habits and where the money actually goes each week, tracking it the way you never bothered to before. It is uncomfortable at first, seeing the real numbers written down instead of just guessing. But the discomfort fades fast once the plan starts to feel like yours instead of something you read about in a book. Every payday now follows the same pattern. Rent first, only what you actually need, cooking at home, a small amount saved before you spend anything else. At first, the savings look almost pointless. Some months it is barely enough to fill a small envelope, but you remember another line from that book. Never laugh at small savings because one day they become big opportunities. Months turn into a year. For the first time in your life, you reach the end of the month with money still sitting in your account. You cannot quite believe it. You are not smiling because you got rich. You are smiling because you finally took control of your own life. Your friends are still living the same way, celebrating every payday, borrowing before the next one arrives. One evening they invite you out again, telling you that you have changed, that you never have fun anymore. You look at them and smile gently. You tell them you still have fun, but now you sleep peacefully because tomorrow's bills are already handled. Looking back, the year mark feels less like an achievement and more like proof of a system that finally works. It is not that the money itself changed your mood. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that if something unexpected happened tomorrow, an emergency, a slow month, a broken appliance, you would not be standing in a discount aisle counting coins for a loaf of bread again. That feeling is worth more than anything you could have bought with the money you used to spend. Now, let me pause here for a second because I want to give you something that will help you actually apply everything we just talked about. I put together a free ebook called Financial Freedom in 90 Days, and it walks you step by step through exactly how to build a budget on a small income and start saving even when it feels impossible. To get it, all you need to do is subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a thoughtful comment about today's topic. Skip the generic comment and actually tell me the biggest takeaway you are walking away with, or one habit you are thinking about changing starting this week. Do you think the first week after payday decides your future, or is it just about staying comfortable in the moment? Let me know in the comment. I genuinely want to know what you think. Years pass. You keep learning, reading about discipline, personal finance, business, self-improvement. You keep waking up before sunrise, not because anyone forces you to anymore, but because it has simply become who you are. You work hard during the day and spend your evenings learning. Slowly, you start a very small side business. Nothing glamorous, nothing fast. Some months it makes almost nothing, but you do not quit because you remember exactly what your old life looked like. There are setbacks along the way, too. One year, a slow season nearly wipes out the little business entirely, and you have to go back to living exactly as tightly as you did when you first started. Instead of seeing it as failure, you treat it the same way you treated that blown-out bike tire years earlier. You adjust, you keep the notebook open, and you keep moving forward 1 week at a time. Your savings slowly become the down payment on a small piece of land. Years later, that land becomes your first rental property. The income from that property helps you build another, then another. You never rush, and you never borrow money just to impress people. You build slowly, carefully, patiently. You still live simply. You still cook at home. You still plan every paycheck the same way you did on day one. Around this same time, you run into one of those old friends again, the one whose life always looked more figured out than yours. The nice car is gone, traded in for something older and more practical. He tells you honestly, for the first time in years, that the debt finally caught up with him, and he had to start over from nothing. He asked how you managed to build what you built, and you tell him the truth, that there was never a big breakthrough moment, just a lot of small, boring decisions repeated for a very long time. He says he wishes someone had told him that a decade earlier. You tell him it is not too late, and for once, you actually mean it. One afternoon, you walk down the same street where years earlier you watched a family get forced out of their rented house. You stop, look at the houses around you, and smile quietly. Not because you became famous, and not because you became the richest person in town, but because you no longer fear losing the roof over your head. A few years later, you finish building your own modest home. The day you get the keys, you stand alone in the empty living room and remember every night you went to bed hungry. Every week, your entire paycheck vanished in a weekend. Every tear you hid because you thought your life would never change. You look around, close your eyes, and quietly say thank you. Not long after, your mother comes to visit. She walks slowly through every room, running her hand along the walls, and starts crying. You get worried and ask what is wrong. Through her tears, she smiles and tells you that when you were young, she used to worry your paycheck would never be enough to give you a good life. She looks around one more time and says, she was wrong. You hug her? And neither of you says anything else because sometimes love does not need words. Years later, people in town do not know you as the warehouse worker anymore. They know you as an honest business owner, a landlord who treats his tenants with kindness, someone who understands exactly what it feels like to struggle. Whenever someone cannot pay rent because of a genuine hardship, you never raise your voice because you still remember that frightened family standing on the sidewalk all those years ago. You never forget where you came from. Looking back now, you realize the hardest part was never the math. Saving $20 a week is not complicated. Cooking your own dinner is not complicated. What was actually hard was sitting with the discomfort of staying home while everyone else went out, of wearing the same shoes for one more season, of being the person in the room who seemed a little different from everyone around him. The financial plan was simple. The emotional part of sticking with it was the real challenge, and it is the part nobody warns you about. A lot of people believe a small paycheck is the reason they cannot build wealth, but sometimes the problem is not the size of the paycheck. It is the absence of a plan. Your income was not the first thing that changed, your habits were. You stopped trying to look wealthy and started actually becoming financially secure. Wealth was never built in a single payday. It gets built one decision at a time, one saved dollar at a time, one habit at a time. Remember this, you do not need to earn millions to start changing your future. You only need to become faithful with what you already have because a paycheck can feed you for a month, but wisdom can provide for a lifetime. So, let me leave you with one last question. When your next paycheck lands, will it disappear or will it become the beginning of a different future? Tell me in the comments, what is one habit you are going to change starting today? If this story meant something to you, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and send it to someone who might need a little hope today. Your next paycheck could be the first break in the future you have been working toward. See you in the next video.